Today, we're diving into one of the greatest intellectual rivalries in all of history, Plato versus his own student, Aristotle. Now, we all know Aristotle is famously called the father of political science, but that title actually raises a really fascinating question when you think about his legendary teacher.
Right? Plato is the undisputed father of Western philosophy. So how in the world did his star pupil branch off and become the father of a totally different field? Well, that intellectual split is the key to understanding both of them, and it literally lays the foundation for how we think about politics even today. It all starts with one fundamental difference in how they saw the world.
It really just boils down to this. Plato was the ultimate idealist. He was always searching for the perfect, absolute best. But Aristotle? He was a pragmatist through and through. He was way more interested in finding the best practical solution. What could actually work in the messy real world. So while Plato was wise in the world of abstract ideas, Aristotle argued that a ruler needed to be worldly wise. And that tension, right there, defines everything.
To really get a grip on their political differences, we have to start with something even more basic, how they saw reality itself.
Okay, so check this out. For Plato, the perfect idea of something, like the perfect ideal chair that only exists in the mind, that was the ultimate reality. Any physical chair you can actually sit on, that's just a shadow, an imperfect copy. But Aristotle was like, hold on a second. He argued that the idea and the matter are totally interdependent. You can't have the form of a chair without the actual physical stuff of a chair. For him, both were equally real.
And this whole mindset is just perfectly captured by Aristotle's most famous principle, the golden mean. He believed in moderation, in finding that perfect balance between extremes. For him, that meant balancing the world of perfect ideas with the practical realities of the material world. You just can't have one without the other.
And you can probably guess that this difference in worldview leads directly to a major disagreement on the most practical question of all. How should we be governed?
So Plato, believing in this world of perfect knowledge, came up with the philosopher king. This would be one single, all-wise ruler whose knowledge was so absolute that it was just better than any written law. But Aristotle was deeply skeptical of giving any single person that much power. He argued for a rule of law, a system of impartial rules that applied to everyone, including the rulers themselves.
This brilliant quote just nails Aristotle's reasoning. He believed that even the wisest person is still human, right? They're subject to emotions, to passions, but law, on the other hand, is pure reason. It's impersonal. It can't be swayed by a bad mood or some personal bias. For Aristotle, that made law a far more reliable guide for a state than any single ruler ever could be.
And you can really see his commitment to observation in this chart. Instead of just dreaming up a perfect state, Aristotle did something revolutionary for his time. He studied 158 real-world constitutions. He then sorted them based on two simple questions. Who rules? One, a few or many, and in whose interest do they rule? The normal forms, as you can see, are when they govern for the people. The perverted forms are when rulers get greedy and act in their own self-interest, turning monarchy into tyranny or aristocracy into oligarchy.
And all this research brings us to what Aristotle considered the best practicable government, the polity. If you look back at the chart, it's the normal form of rule by the many. But for Aristotle, this specifically meant rule by the middle class, governing in the interest of the entire population. This wasn't some utopian dream. It was a practical, achievable solution.
So, why the middle class? Well, Aristotle's reasoning here is pure common sense. The rich, he said, are arrogant and don't know how to obey. The poor are often ignorant and driven by desperation. But the middle class? They have moderate wealth and reason, so they're trusted by both sides. They're not arrogant like the rich or easily manipulated like the poor, which makes them the bedrock of a stable state, preventing conspiracies and revolutions.
This practical approach also totally defined their ideas of justice. While Plato was off searching for some abstract, ideal form of justice, Aristotle was trying to figure out how justice could actually work in a real society.
This led him to his theory of proportionate justice. The core idea is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. What a person receives from society should be proportional to what they contribute. And on the flip side, any punishment should be proportional to the harm that was done. For Aristotle, justice wasn't about some abstract idea of equality. It was all about balanced proportion. And he saw this theory having two main dimensions. First, there's distributive justice, which asks who should get society's resources, like wealth and honor. Aristotle's answer? It should be based on merit and contribution.
Second, you've got rectificatory justice. That's all about the legal system. When a wrong is committed, the fix has to be proportional to the injury.
Now, this quote gets right to the heart of his thinking, and honestly, it's a challenging idea. We often think of justice as treating everyone exactly the same. But for Aristotle, that's only half the picture. He argues that it's also unjust to give the same rewards to people who have made unequal contributions. For him, real justice requires recognizing and rewarding those differences in merit.
So, when you put all of this together, his focus on the real world, his classifications, his ideas on law and justice, it becomes crystal clear why Aristotle, and not Plato, earned that title, Father of Political Science.
I mean, think about it. He was the first person to approach politics like a scientist. He didn't just dream up a perfect state. He went out and gathered data, studying those 158 constitutions to see what actually worked. He used an inductive method, which means he'd built his theories up from real-world evidence instead of starting with some abstract idea. This focus on the achievable, plus concepts like the rule of law, formed the very building blocks of political science.
But, and this is a big but, being worldly wise means observing the world exactly as it is. And in Aristotle's world, some things were deeply, deeply unjust. His pragmatic approach actually led him to justify one of history's greatest evils.
Aristotle argued that some people were slaves by nature. In his view, these were individuals who simply lacked the capacity for higher reason. He believed they were naturally suited to be ruled by a master, both for their own good and for the good of the state. He saw it as a natural, even useful, part of the world he was observing.
That justification stands in stark, chilling contrast to later ideas about human dignity, which are so powerfully articulated here by the philosopher Immanuel Kant. The idea that every single person is an end in themselves, not just a tool for someone else's purpose, is a profound critique of Aristotle's position. It shows the massive moral blind spots that can come from a purely pragmatic worldview.
So this whole journey, from the nature of reality all the way to the justification of slavery, brings us right back where we started. The fundamental disagreement between the idealist teacher and his pragmatist student isn't just some dusty old history. It leaves us with a question that is absolutely timeless.
When we look at the huge challenges facing our societies today, everything from climate change to political reform, which path should we follow? Do we strive for Plato's perfect, utopian solutions, even if they seem impossible to reach? Or do we, like Aristotle, focus on the messy, compromised, but achievable progress, the best that is practicable? That debate started over 2,000 years ago continues today.